Hi, I'm That Slavic Writer Guy, and today we're going to be talking about Gaetano Donizetti's The Daughter of the Regiment, or in French, La Fille du Régiment. It's a two-act comic opera that's chock full of not-where-this-is-going plot twists, all wrapped up with the flourish of Napoleonic French nationalism. To see how a headstrong woman raised by soldiers comes to choose between a high-born marriage of privilege and aristocracy, or true love at first sight of exactly one day, Gremo Opero. The Daughter of the Regiment was composed during Donizetti's 1838 through 1840 stint in Paris, after he had already achieved some success in Italy through works such as L'Elixir dell'Amore. The Daughter of the Regiment was written when it was one of 6 works that Donizetti was working on for the French stage simultaneously. Because this is a French comic opera, some of the dialogue is actually spoken rather than sung in a very stylized way. Donizetti also adapted this opera into an Italian version that comprised recitatives for what were the spoken parts in the original version. He also changed a lot of the details for the Italian audience so that it wasn't so rah-rah French army. The opera actually also flopped on its first night because the tenor sucked. Now, this is a huge problem because one of the most famous aria from this opera at the end of Act 1 actually requires the tenor to hit 8 high Cs, sometimes 9 depending on who you believe, or if an opera company wants to go for that effect, even more, such as something akin to how in ballets sometimes the prima ballerinas do however many fouettes they can do in a row just to show off. Well, with this aria, sometimes tenors do the same thing, kind of the Mount Everest of operas, and how many goddamn high Cs can you hit in a row? Let's get started with our cast of characters. First of all, we've got Marie, a coloratura soprano who, believe me, in this opera has to do a lot of coloraturaing. She is a vivandere. So what a vivandere is a woman that would accompany the troops out when they were on maneuvers, who provided things like cigarettes, booze, foodstuffs, writing paper, and the basic needs of the soldiers. She kind of basically ran the PX, if you will, or the general store. Now, this is the first in the list of the things about this opera that I really kind of thought things were going to go one way, and then it was like, wow, not where this is heading. So when I heard about the Vivanderia and who they were and what they did, one of the first things that ran through my mind was, yeah, they fed and supplied the soldiers and accompanied the soldiers around, and yeah, right, sure enough, being that time, they were also probably hookers. Well, not quite. In fact, in the French national memory, they have kind of a storied or romanticized image of them as being kind of the older sisters or mothers to the soldiers in their regiments and battalions. And Marie in this opera is really no exception to it. She was found abandoned on the battlefield and has been raised by the soldiers of the 21st Regiment to be their collective daughter, and who grew up to becoming one of these women and providing them foodstuffs and running their canteen and making sure that their army camp is in fact a home. So she really is a woman of honor, if not really a woman of good breeding and fine manners, as we'll come back later in the opera. Moving on, we've got Tonio, who is a tenor and local where the army is, and he has fallen madly in love with Marie as after he helped her from falling off a cliff and saw her exactly once. Then we've got Sergeant Sulpice. He is a bass, and instead of being the kind of creepy old grandfather who wants to marry the hot young cutie because she comes from good breeding and it will sustain or get him her fortune, or just because he's a creepy old man, this guy also turns out to be much more of a father or older brother to Marie and really wants what's best for her throughout the entire opera. So again, another whole case where, yeah, comic opera, but not where Donizetti is going to take it. Next, we've got Hortensius. He is the Marquis of Birkenfield's butler, and also really kind of a snot nose. He's just really shocked with anything that is not high manners or good breeding. And finally, the last major character in the opera who is a singing voice to round them out, the Marquise of Birkenfield. She's a contra alto, also really, really concerned with good breeding now that she's in her silver days. But wink, wink, nod, nod, was also a bit of a wild young lass back in the day, as we'll move our plot along, going on into the opera. Act 1. We are set during the early part of the Napoleonic Wars, during a time when Mr. Shorty and his soldiers were kicking ass and taking names all across the continent of Europe. As we open, the local peasants are consumed with fear at seeing the French army's soldiers maneuvering in the valley below their village. The Countess of Birkenfield and her butler show up, and they are just as absolutely terrified about the army being anywhere near them. So they all sing a happy chorus when the soldiers finally appear to be leaving. But then they get another scare when the 21st Regiment of the French Army shows up and is like, "Don't worry, guys, we're the French Army. We're your friends. After we're done conquering you and every other place around Europe, life is gonna be sweet." And while they're showing up and introducing themselves like this, then Marie shows up along the soldiers, and along with Sergeant Sulpice they sing a duet about how proud they are to be soldiers, and they talk about how Marie was discovered as an infant on a battlefield where the army was, and has been raised collectively by the soldiers of the regiment to become a Viviane Thierry. And Marie sings further about how much she likes the soldiers' life and would fight alongside them at any time, if at all possible. Then Sulpice kind of takes her aside and asks about this young guy that she's been rumored to having been seen around with. And he is shocked when instead of a good French officer, this guy is just a local civilian from the Tyrol. And right on cue, the soldiers bring the guy in because he's been wandering around their camp. Gee, I wonder why. And they accuse him of having been spying on the camp, because if you just were walking around the camp back in the day, that was apparently the assumption that was to be made. But Marie intervenes on his behalf and tells him how she knows him and that she has fallen in true love with this guy because of exactly one instance, the only time she saw him, when he literally saved her from falling off a cliff while she was hiking. Yep, they've met exactly once, and it's true love, baby. But that is, after all, opera plot, ladies and gentlemen, even if it is comic. So anyway, the soldiers politely escort Tonio away from the camp, but he escapes and comes right back to find Maria conveniently alone. And they sing a duet proclaiming their true love for each other. Wait, stop. Again, you met once when he helped you from falling off a cliff, and now you've met again today, so this is like day 2 of your romance max, but it's apparently hot and heavy just from having seen each other kind of twice. But Marie is going to play a little hard to get, she decides in the end, because she goes, I love you, you love me, but the thing is, you have to get the approval of my father, who is collectively all the guys of the 21st Regiment. So he resolves that he is going to completely change his life from being just a local country bumpkin, and he's going to join up with the conquering French army to win Marie's hand. Sergeant Sulpice shows up and is like, "Hey, you two, break it off," and he shoos them away, just in time for the Marquise of Birkenfeld to show up with her butler Hortensius, and they are so terrified still of soldiers running around in the greater Tyrol area that she requests that Sulpice give her an escort back to her Chateau Birkenfield, as it's named after her. And Sulpice is like, huh, Birkenfield, that name is really familiar, um, because it was on this letter that we found when we discovered Marie as an infant. And so what's up with that? And the Marquise is just like, oh, yeah, that, yeah, it was because my someone, let's see, oh yeah, no, my sister knew this guy in your regiment, and so that guy was became married to her, and he was my brother-in-law. Yeah, 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 that's who he was. I think, and I think they had a daughter, but then she died, and then he died on the battlefield, and something happened to her. I don't know what. So that's how you know that name, and it's all perfectly boring, nothing to see here. And Sulpice is like, okay, I'll get you that escort, I guess. And I'm gonna bring in Marie and show her to you, because that would mean that she's actually your niece, right? So Marie, having met her long lost aunt, and being told that she has to be taken away by her to their chateau as well, in order to be taught the refined ways of high society, begrudgingly agrees to go with her. Just right on cue for Tonia to show up and announce that he has joined the ranks of the French army. At which point he sings an aria where he has to hit eight, arguably nine high seas all at once. And the soldiers are really, surprised at first that he actually has joined the army in order to win the heart of this woman that he has met exactly twice. But they go, yeah, buddy, you seem like a pretty cool guy, so we're gonna agree to all that. Just there's one slight problem. The girl you love is about to leave, or has in fact is leaving with the Marquise of Bocanther. Or yeah, Broken. You know what her ever name is called, and they're going to go to her chateau. Antonio, who just changed his whole life for this, is like, "Fuck, I'm pissed." End of Act One. So a few months have gone by at the Marquise's chateau, and a bit of the taming of the shrew gone wrong appears to be how things have played out, as over these months the Marquise has tried to wean Marie off of her tomboyish ways that she's learned from growing up with the army regiment her entire life, and make her into a suitable fina dama of high society in order to be married to her nephew, the Duke of Krakenthorpe. And Marie isn't so happy about this, but when Sergeant Sulpice shows up and is asked to encourage her into getting all warm to the idea of this marriage, he sees how she's being turned into a yoink yoink high society lady, and uh, instead, encouraged by Sulpice, the two of them kind of make fun of all of the high society uh, manners. And so they end up making fun of all of this fine society music she's supposed to slay by breaking out in their good old fashioned army drinking songs, culminating in the song of their regiment. Following that, we have some downtime for Marie, as she sings an aria about how she doesn't really like all this society stuff, and they tried to get her all excited about it, but it just doesn't do it for her. But she's reconciled that because she is the niece of this high society lady, that due to the rules of good courtsmanship, or whatever you want to call them, she has to go through with this marriage. But don't worry, because just in time, the soldiers show up right at the Marquise's chateau with Tonio, who is now a lieutenant in the French army. And the soldiers are all like, "Hey, Marie, great to see you again." And with Tonio showing up, Sulpice and Marie are all like, "Hey, yeah, the fearsome trio is all back together, and isn't this great?" And Tonio, being a bit of a cheeky monkey, says, I just learned this secret about you from my uncle, but I can't tell anyone what it is because it would blow up the society crowd. Something fierce, baby. The Marquise shows up and is like, God damn it, what are all these soldiers doing at my house? Antonio appears among them and he's like, yeah, we're here because I'm going to ask for Marie's hand in marriage. And the Marquise is like, yeah, you know what? Fuck you. The actual marriage to my nephew is going to go on instead, and you and all of your army ranks can just fuck off. And so it looks like that the wedding ceremony is going to go ahead, and all of the courtiers of the Marquise's circle all enter, including the Duchess of Krakenthorpe, who shows up with the groom to be and is all like, well, god damn it, where is the actual bride, who hasn't really bothered showing up? And Marie and Sulpice enter finally, and she's resigned to this marriage. At which point, all of the soldiers basically rush back in and crash the marriage, and reveal that she is just a canteen girl, she's not a lady of high society, and she's actually a bastard. So given all of these things, can you please just let her marry Tonio instead? And the Marquise finally admits that she's the mother and consents to true love of exactly having them see each other for the total of 3 days triumphing, and they all rejoice with a great flurry on the end of glory to the happy couple and glory to la France. There you have it. That is the two-act opera of The Daughter of the Regiment, as explained by That Slavic Opera Guy. This is a short and pretty straightforward one. I wanted to keep this one that way. But really, it's such a fun opera because instead of the normal, grumpy old man wants to marry the hot young cutie with a fortune, and the guy she actually loves has to usually dance around and sneak around and at some point end up cross-dressing. It's really a nice refreshment to see a comic opera with a happy ending that's just a lot of, almost subverts a lot of the comic opera tropes. So that's it. Daughter of the Regiment, as summarized by That Slavic Writer Guy. Like this or don't. Subscribe to my channel or don't. I'm me. I'm still going to do what I do anyway. So I don't give a fuck. There you have it. See you for my coming talk about La Traviata in the coming days.